Mm.
And, you know, when that happens, you can sort of make it sound spiritual. I remember I was a bit like that once when God was calling me to Queensland.
Oh, no.
So I tried to give a spiritual response, which was reasonable. So, yeah, I can't remember how long the process was, but I can remember saying in my heart, no, this is not right. This is not what God wants for him. And really praying into that. And we did talk about that quite openly later on. So, yeah, it wasn't what God had in mind, you know, for him to move on. And at one stage for us to move on, I think God, if you really, you know, following what he wants for your life, especially if there's an apostolic call, there's a geographical territory.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, God just really put that in our hearts to, you know, to stay here and to be here to work together.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been amazing because, you know, over 25 years, you have some great ideas and you have some darn stupid ones as well. So you know, he's just been the easiest man to work with and to cooperate and to support and, you know, incredible loyalty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's not too many men around. Not too many pastors have got what I've got, honestly, in this regard.
You are blessed. And Joel and Sarah, on the topic of honor, and you have heard Brian and Lynn and also Graham spoke about some of the dynamics, the key principles that has created the relationship, and you guys have seen that demonstrated in your life, in the churches, and in your encounters with them, the community that you're part of. I heard a story, Joel, that you and your brother helped build the stable, the church that Brian and Lynn, your church now, and the way Brian puts it across to us was, you know, it was like the sons and daughters of the house rose up to help build the house of God and to help their spiritual parents. Can you just describe what makes you do that? Was it out of honor and respect, the values that you've learned over the years? What prompted you and your brother, and I'm sure Sarah is part of that, to do what you did in the building of the church that you have right now? Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, sorry. Where do we start? I guess, firstly, like what we built doesn't happen without a group of people really, like, and it's our generation. There's 20 or 30 people of our generation predominantly that enabled the church to be built. So the church doesn't own it, but these guys made it happen financially. They own it, and I guess that's from an accounting point of view, there was a structure that we needed to put in place to allow that to have the resources we needed to be able to do to actually purchase the building and develop the building. But there was also, for us, I guess how do you explain it? That, like, Pastor Brian and Linda talked about this since I was like 15. I knew what was in their heart, and I knew what like they really wanted, and really felt that, like, that was the next step for us as a church. We were in a building in the corner of town and in the back box of the industrial estate, and we felt God was asking us to get more involved in the city and contribute to the city in a really positive way. And this building's connected to the main street down in the business CBD, basically, of Sale, if Sale has a CBD, but it's in the main business sort of street. And that was like the need. And for us, we really felt like we could do it. And I was an accountant that never used a tool in my life, really. I never used a drop saw. Didn't even know what a drop saw was before we started. And somehow we just had the belief and the faith that we could do it, and that within our group, we could do it. And we worked jolly hard, and somehow I still look around and think, how on earth did we build this? Because, and we didn't do it all alone. We had some really good builders, particularly at the start, that worked with us and taught us a hell of a lot of how to go about it, how to use a drop saw. And I remember one of them saying, do it like this, and showed you all these techniques and that sort of thing. But just that, I guess for us, there was the need to do it. And then through that commitment to it, we just had this confidence that we would find a way to do it. And we just learnt so much through that. And what we're doing in our personal lives probably has really been born a little bit out of that as well. So it's added so much to our lives. So, yeah.
So Sarah, you know, your husband being an accountant, and, you know, that experience of everybody coming together to build this thing that is on Brian and Lynn's heart. And I could only imagine, as spiritual children of the house, you know, that there's got to be a deep motivation to help your spiritual parents in a way to see this vision come to pass. Can you describe your experience in that whole thing? You know, from my spiritual point of view, and of also the, you know, the hard work that needs to be done. An accountant having to learn how to, that's classic, but it shows the heart of sons and daughters, to be honest. I wish that there are more people like you guys in our church here and other churches that just are moved by the Father's vision, and then that's enough to really push them towards putting their hands to the plow and make it happen. What was your account of that, Sarah?
Firstly, I need to say I feel really guilty because I didn't have a lot of faith in him. And I feel really bad that I wasn't like, you can do it, honey. Yeah. I was like, are you sure you should be doing that? And but it's been like amazing to see. But yeah, like we knew that Pastor Brian and Lynn had a great love of that particular building. But our community also has a love of that building. And it wasn't just that our church had a need, like the community had a need. That building is right in the middle of town. So many people had tried to do something with it and nothing had worked. And so we just felt like not only could that building be a beautiful, you know, place of worship and our home church, but it could just be a real gift to the community as well. And that's been what Pastor Brian and Lynn's intention has been, is that space would not just be restored, you know, basically, but really made beautiful and made available for people to use. So it's been amazing to see, and it's been amazing to see the community watch that unfold. And yeah, I mean, it was like a ton of work and it was just crazy hours that some people put in. And when we say us, it's not us, it's a group of people, you know, but we just really felt there was a group of people that felt like we're not just wanting to give what we can, but we just felt like we needed to give everything. And I think sometimes we think our capacity to give or contribute is like here, but it's actually so much more. And when your heart is, we're just going to give whatever it takes to make this happen. It's pretty amazing what a group of people can achieve. So yeah, it was a really hard journey. Like, it wasn't easy. There was probably, it put pressure on relationships at times. It was long hours, all of those things, you know, families. A lot of us had very young children. So Joel and Rowan would, you know, often be gone for 20 hours of the day and for that season. So I think, you know, people paid a price to see it happen. But coming out the back of it, I think you realize just how capable you can be when a group of people are prepared to step together and say, like, whatever it takes, we're gonna do this. So yeah,
I think what is notorious about your building is the chandeliers. You know, and nobody has a church building like that. I've never been to a church building that you have chandeliers, and it's so fitting. It's almost like modernity and the ancient past meet together in your building. And that's the best way I could describe it. I want to ask you another question while I have you at this time. Is you run businesses, right? And I walk into your shop, Sarah. I'm believing that was your shop.
Yes.
And you have all these gifts, and it's a business, legitimate business. And Brian said that that's your business, and it's right attached to the church. Because in the kingdom, God is raising up entrepreneurs and business people. And how did you come about starting that business? Was it something that you and your husband thought of and planned together? And can you just talk to us about how did that come about?
Yeah, so we run a business called Victoria Hall, and we do lots of different things sort of within that space. And that concept we actually talked about on our very first date. It's very romantic. We went out for a coffee, and we knew each other very well, obviously, because we were good friends and we'd grown up in youth group together. But we just began to sort of talk about like dreams for the future, and we both had a real dream in our heart to be in business and to one day have like a kind of multifaceted business and community event space. That was something that we shared, and we spent about 7 years just mulling over that dream and preparing, really. Like, we just really felt like, you know, what we needed to do. So, you know, we spent 7 years just, you know, saving, and Joel did a master's degree and I did some education, and we didn't know exactly what it would look like, but we just knew at some point an opportunity would sort of present itself. And that opportunity came in this beautiful building, which backs onto our church. Yeah. And it was really quite amazing because we'd been looking, and we'd actually tried to make something sort of happen a few times ourselves, and we'd pursued things and it just never quite happened. You know, you sometimes pursue something and for whatever reason, it just never quite happened. But the opportunity for the stables happened for the church, and Joel made a commitment, and we made a commitment to be involved in that. And then within a very short space of time, our building opened up to us. And it just felt like, you know, it was just the right time. Yeah. And so we've been renovating for 100 years. Yeah. We've been renovating. So we did the stables, and then we've been renovating our building, and we're getting close to kind of begin to open up the different facets within that space.
Yeah. So would you say then, Joel, feel free to jump in here. Would you say that building the house of God also led to God opening the door for you guys, for your business? Because I can see that there's a connection there with investing in the house of God and God opening up this opportunity for you guys. Is that something that you see happening, or it was just, you guys are just smart kids?
I think that it's the whole drive to move into business is in some ways comes out of us wanting to be the best versions of ourselves and contribute to our community. And that's we like that. That's what we want to do with our lives. So we've always wanted to be in business and be able to impact our community and create opportunities for our friends to move into business. Like as an accountant, that's like, I'm thinking about what do I want to do with an accounting practice. I want to help people my age and younger get into owning their own business and having a successful business. So for us, it was always something we wanted to do. I guess the way I go about it is I live life the same way I play games. you build up and look like you're doing nothing, and then all of a sudden rock up and we're here. Like that's been my strategy with every single game I've played in my life. The guys listening that have played games with me would hate it, but that's just what we believed was the right thing to do, and we prepared for that. And it was, for us, we want to be able to, like, we're not trying to build a Christian business. We're trying to build a business, but we're still a Christian, and we still love our church. So that for us, not many people get the same opportunity to have such a physical business building connected to their church and be able to benefit their church from their business like we do. So it's really a privilege to be able to do that, because we've just received so much from it. So we want to be able to keep giving back, and we want to be able to keep giving to our community as well. So, yeah.
Wow. Brian, that's a snapshot of what God is doing today with raising up sons and daughters and entrepreneurs and kingdom business people. And these two just embody that, Brian. And that's what we want to see all across Australia and the Pacific and the world. It's the reality of the tangibility, I suppose, of young people in the marketplace, which you, Joel and Sarah, represent tonight. That's why I actually personally asked for you two to come on. I just sense that there's something about you both, and I'm sure there are many that should be here to tell their story. And I just really commend you both for your heart and you're highly qualified young people, an accountant and you education and business, Sarah. And there's so much more to the two of you, and it's just beautiful. And we want to see an army. We want to see an army, you know, in business, in politics, in community, every sphere of society. We want to see people like you guys there, just releasing the fragrance of the kingdom. Where you are, and the fact that your businesses are actually attached to the church building, that's something. I said to Tina, we talk kingdom, but I see kingdom here. You know, people are preaching about the kingdom. I see the kingdom right there as I walk from building to building. And who owned the music shop? Is that yours too?
That's my brother.
That's your brother. See, there you go. You see, it's just, it goes on and on and on. Brian and Lynn and Graham, I want to ask you this question about fathering of the next generation. Again, we've touched on that before, but can you just share your view and your experience on the raising of the next generation, raising up of sons and daughters, and what is your understanding of that that God is doing today?
Yeah. We think about the future and we talk about the future a lot, and I believe that is, perhaps one of the highest priorities in what we're doing is preparing that next generation. I think what we're seeing in the world more and more is chaos, difficulty to survive in business and just to survive in life. I think that is the world that we live in. But my understanding of biblical history is that in every generation, particularly when it becomes difficult, there is a people that God sets apart to shine and to be an answer in that generation. And what we talk about quite a lot is talk about purpose and also excellence. So I believe that what God is doing with Joel and Sarah and others like them right now is he is building into them. Like Joel was actually the project leader for the restoration of the stables. Had never done a day's handiwork in his life. But when you see it, people come to our city to see this, to see the stables. And I believe this is, excellence on the ground. So I believe that you have the mind of excellence. You can have the mind of excellence, and you need to have the spirit of excellence. So what we are really doing right now is working with the next generation to build that into them. Because, what I see in the future really is a generation rising in the region of Gippsland that are entrepreneurial, carry the Spirit of God, and are excellent in everything they do. And, that's an ideal, but you can see now that it's possible.
That's it.
So we've got a lot to do. We have been at work here in Sale with the church now for nearly 30 years. And obviously when that happens, my role is naturally changing. But, for the rest of the years that God gives me to, be fit and healthy for us together and energetic, is to really train up that next generation to be like the Josephs, the Daniels of their day, who are really an answer.
Yeah. And Brian and Lynn, I suppose it comes a point in a man's journey that you begin to think about your success story, legacy, and raising up the next generation to continue that, your vision, your message from God. But it seems to me like that has already happened for you too, with your spiritual children, with your natural children. I mean, they're just amazing things that I saw being there. And Lynn, how do you see this whole thing of raising up the next generation to continue the vision that God has given to you and Brian? And of course, looking to the future, we do need to start raising them up now.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I guess it starts with raising up sons and daughters that grab hold of the vision that God's given you for the city and what God's wanting you to do, and joining with you with that, and labouring with you. And I guess the transfer happens like with the building up of sons and daughters in the house. And then, sort of handing over things to them. I suppose that's what we're kind of trying to do at the moment as we're getting older. Don't feel old, but we are. And now, and trying to encourage them and help them to rise up and take their place in it. Not an easy job sometimes. But we've got a lot of, I think that's trying to have them connected to what we're connected with, the spirit of the house, and, the relationships and covenant and all those kind of things, like the spirit of the house and the purpose that God's put us here for.
Sure.
Transferring that legacy to them. That's it. So that then they can, so when they take it over, it's just like we were there, like it's, a handing over of, it's a hard thing for me to explain. Does that make sense?
You're doing perfectly good. Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have been, I would say, churches like ours are always in transition. That's the prophetic and, apostolic. You're never static. You're, it's transitioning every day. And I believe that the leadership of our church now is transitioning. Yeah. And you keep working with that until there's precision.
Yes.
And, I can see what needs to happen, and I can see how it needs to happen. So we just keep working with that. It's, Pastor Graham, and it'd be like working on a car until you get it just running perfectly.
Yeah,
and then you can hand it back to the driver.
Yeah, that's so true. And Graham, how do you see this same concept of raising up spiritual children now and handing the baton over to them? And it's not because we're getting old, but it's just that we're very calculated and strategic in the way we lead, I suppose, because to be apostolic, You got to see the future. You also need to see the now and the things that we need to do so that we are not haphazard in our operation and our conduct. But everything is done because you see clearly prophetically, and then you're operating apostolically.
Yeah.
How do you see that also, Graham, working for you and also in your partnership with Brian and Lynn?
Wow, where do you start? My own spiritual father, Brian, and our spiritual father, says when we speak, the frequency of our heart and spirit goes out. Just like our covenant relationship. The beginning of the relationship was not a covenant relationship, but the raw material for the covenant relationship was present. And we were joined in our hearts by the Spirit of God and took the journey where God began to develop our hearts and our lives into what we've come to understand as a covenant relationship, partnership, and destiny. When we began to rise, or when I was exposed to the concept of fathering and sonship, in my immaturity, I came home from that particular conference with our spiritual father and with a great excitement shared to our church family. We've got to move towards fathering and sonship. People have got to become sons and daughters.
Overnight.
And I remember it so well because within just a few weeks, I had many of our people in our church come and say to me, "We are your sons. We are your daughters." And I was excited before I realized that they had the aspiration to become sons and daughters, but were never at that point yet. So we had a journey to go on. And over the years of ministry, I've come to understand that, I say this carefully, I've come to understand that our church family is like my own family. And if I'm to be the father of my own children, then as a spiritual father, I must adopt the family of God as my children. Just like Malachi says, in the last days, the hearts of the fathers will turn to the sons, and the sons' hearts of the sons will turn to the fathers. To truly come into sonship, again, is not something that can be fabricated. It cannot be manufactured. It must be of the Spirit. When I talk about and think about fathering and sonship, I am absolutely convinced and absolutely assured that it is a spirit. It is the Spirit of God, just as the Father was joined to the Son, Christ, and vice versa. So that same spirit of connection and relationship and honor, God wants to develop that in the house of God, and then amongst the bodies of Christ, the churches. And so it is not something that you can talk about and people go, okay, well, I'll just decide to be a son. There's heart work to do, and there's hard work to do.
Yes.
And so, I know that I've had occasions with some of our people when they were either out of order or immature. I would be loving but firm, and would need to bring truth to their attention or challenge behaviours. And of course, like a lot of churches, if you challenge behaviours that don't want to be changed, generally people get offended and they probably take a walk. And we've had a few people take a walk from our church. But as I found that as I've kept speaking my heart, loving the people, speaking forth the truth, really turning my heart toward them, really speaking growing in the apostolic, first of all, in my own understanding, growing as a son under my own spiritual father, that I have, by the grace of God, sent out this frequency through the ministry and the speaking and the relating that I've done. And those that capture that frequency in their heart are the raw material for the sons and daughters of the future. So this is the principle upon which I have begun or attempted to raise up sons and daughters in the house. And not everybody responds. You can still have very good friends in the house, but the ones that are sons and daughters, they capture the frequency, and you know, Joel and Sarah, and the things that they have shared. They, if the people listening tonight could look past the practical sacrifice they've made to see that church, the Cobham Coast Stables, become what it is under Brian and Lynn's leadership, and through their activity and connection with their generation, look past all the hard work. I mean, all these things that they described were very real in this natural world, but something happened in their lives before the first piece of wood was cut, before the first bit of concrete was laid, before the first brick was torn down, before the first sheet of iron went on the roof. Something had happened in their hearts. They caught a frequency. And even in their, excuse me for saying this, but even in their immaturity, they responded to the frequency. And they kept growing. They would grow in honor, they would grow in love. They begin to capture and see the heart of Brian and Lynn. And this is what happens as you become sons and daughters in the spirit. You come into a frequency in the spirit which connects you more and more to the flow from heaven. It's not an arrogance. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm not trying to be rude. I certainly would not sit there and say I have all the answers, because I know I don't. But I know where the answer comes from. The answer is from heaven. And if we can connect our lives to that flow, and then the next generation can capture the frequency of our spirit and that flow, they too will begin to tap into the flow and become repositioned to believe what Sarah said was impossible. It's quite a remarkable thing, and all I can say is of the spirit. Takes a lot of patience. And I've failed many times. But you know, if we can stay the course, little children become bigger children. Children become adolescents. Adolescents become adults, and then a generation of true mature sons and daughters can carry the flow from the kingdom that God has appointed to a city or a region, so that the generations after us can begin to transform the region.
Just love listening to you, Graham. You got a very gracious way of speaking the truth, and it's you know, soft-spoken but piercing.
Oh, God's good.
Into the heart.
Brian's helped me do that. Deanna's helped me do that.
I can tell, you know, the journey has made you guys who you are today. And Joe and Sarah, in this whole area of sonship, I know that what Graham described is true, because I know that what you have done in your life, and even for the house of God and for your region, just even your vision to build the stable, not just for the church, but for the community and for the region. That's, to me, is a son and daughter speaking. And can you just describe to us the benefits of being a son and daughter in the house of God to great spiritual parents? Because there are lots of young people like your age group and younger that they really need to hear this, because there's a big difference between just going to church and just being a member of the church and becoming a son and daughter in the house of God, you know, and that special relationship between you guys and your pastor, Brian and Lynn, as spiritual parents. Can you just describe the benefits? And the next one would be, what's your vision for the future? Let's just stick with the son and daughter thing. And then if we had time, you can just speak about your vision for the future. Joel and Sarah?
Yeah, so I guess I just think it's worthwhile. I might just explain for me what I think sonship is, because for some people it might be a really strange term. I guess for me, what I know is that firstly, Pastor Brian and Lynn hear God for me. So I always think of the story in the Bible where God's coming down to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's walking past and he says, "Shall I hide from my servant what I'm about to do?" And I guess that's how I see Pastor Brian and Lynn for my life. Like, I know that that the way they treat me is they're responsible for me. So I know that God sees them like that. So if there's something wrong in my life, or I need to move further forward in a different area or something like that, I know that God's speaking to them about that. So it just brings this real level of comfort and peace in the relationship. So there's that aspect to it, but also, like, if you think about a natural son and daughter, like my parents, you receive so much from your natural parents, like my way of communicating, my way of like your looks, all those sort of things you receive from your natural parents. And there's just a real benefit when you have whether you call them mentors or father figures or that sort of thing. I don't probably use the term father very often. I don't call Pastor Brian Father Brian or anything like that. But I know who he is to me. I know that he is God for me. I know that he he challenges me like my dad would, and like and pinpoints things in my life that even my dad can't help me with, if that makes sense. Because families have their own challenges. So yeah, we have our own culture and that sort of thing. And that input into my life has made me who I am. Like you receive so much from your natural parents, and your life's built on that as a starting point. But when you mix that with someone who can mentor your life spiritually, but in every area of your life, like our marriage, our business, like there's probably been many times when I've wanted to push more, and Pastor Brian's just said, just wait. Or and he can see that I'm getting myself into danger, and he'll help me restrain. And I know that God's talking to him about that, because he's trying to protect me and he wants the best for our lives. So I just feel real comfortable in that relationship. And if that makes sense to people that they call that father-son, great. But if it doesn't, like, there's plenty of people out there that wouldn't understand that concept. But that's who he is to me. That's who they are to me. And I am who I am because of it. So, yeah.
And I think we very much live in a world where there's been a lot of brokenness and pain in that whole area of fathering and mothering and parenting. There's so much brokenness around that, and many people carry, hurt from family environments and things like that. So I think that, that message of fathering and sonship for some people can be very confronting. But like we've got 2 young kids, and our goal isn't to raise kids that are dependent on us. Your goal is to raise kids that are dependent on God and are able to come into everything that God's created them to be. And so we know that there'll be times when we can't be the only voice in their life, and we can't, that there'll be other people that God will put in their lives that will see things that we maybe can't see, and we would want them to be able to call that forth in our kids. And that's, also the journey that we've been on. There's I don't know if anyone will find this interesting, but there's a book that was written by someone that studied raising boys in like tribal kind of environments. And they said that between, ages 1 and 6, kids needed a mother, that nurturing sort of role. And then from 6 to 12, they needed a father. But then from 12 to 21, when they started to be like come into manhood and womanhood, they needed a tribal elder that would actually raise them in their life. And in the Western world, that's such a foreign, weird concept. But I think it's actually, like, when you read the Bible, it's such a biblical concept for children and us to be in environments where mothers and fathers or elders have input into our lives and raise us up to be what God is wanting us to be. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful. It's the whole concept of takes a whole village to raise a child. Hey, it takes everybody to raise kids these days. And I think this is also true in the spiritual. Our time is running away from us, but I'm just going to ask the last question. If you can answer it in 1 minute each, Brian and Lynn, we'll start with you. What do you see for the future of sales in Gippsland?
Yeah, I think for Gippsland, it is a progressive unfolding of God's purpose. And, when we started out 30 years ago, our goal was to grow the church. And that was pretty much it. But it's a progressive unfolding of what God's purpose is for this region. I really believe that we are here to be a blessing to the city, to the region, to contribute to the transformation of the city and the region. And the way that we're going to go about that is by working with people like Joel and Sarah to become the best person they can be in the kingdom of God. And on this issue of fathering, to me, it's not about so much about being a father. It is about me leading in people in such a way that they can carry legacy to another generation, and that they are empowered to do that. So in a nutshell, that's it. We could talk a lot about that, but that's very much it.
Yeah, but listening to Joel and Sarah, Brian, I mean, many people can quote the concept sonship, but they're not really sons and daughters.
No, that's right.
True sons and daughters there, even though they may not be comfortable with the term.
Yeah.
It's not about that at times. It's really about their heart and the way they perceive you guys.
These guys are the best.
Yeah.
We have a funny relationship because Joel. It's a precious relationship, and you got to laugh because Joel is one of the most independent thinkers. He's very smart, and to change his mind, it's pretty good effort. So I've got to pat myself on the back because I've changed his mind once or twice. But a father-son relationship is not a control relationship. It is an empowering relationship. It is about me empowering these guys to become real sons and daughters of God. Mature, fulfilling their potential, prophetic, and even in their own right, carrying that apostolic dimension. It's about them going much further than me. Yeah.
Love it. I'm learning a lot from you, Brian, honestly. One of my main weakness, I won't say it here, but I'll tell it to you privately, Brian. You said some things tonight that went right through the heart. And
you're a good man, David.
And Lynn, what about you? What do you see for the future?
Well, I guess Brian's explained it pretty well, but I just think training up a generation of people that will carry that message of Christ and everything out into and be leaders and people of influence wherever they are, and to just carry Christ in there and just lead people into that relationship as well. That'll about do it for me.
And you still got many years to do that, so I tell you.
Yeah.
She'll be pleased if I do the dishes in the morning, David.
I have to pile a few more up for him.
I tell
the most of it.
I tell people that I have another anointing, and that is in vacuuming the house. Mopping. Nobody beats me when it comes to mopping the house. love mopping. I don't know why, but I just love it when it comes to, yeah. Anyway, that's Graham, what do you see for the future?
I'd like to answer that question by reading you a scripture, David, which I actually referred to when you were here. It's Ephesians chapter 4 and it's verse 3, which says, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace.
Yeah.
What it doesn't say is endeavoring to keep the spirit of unity in the bond of agreement.
Wow.
So the church, I think, endeavors to be united by agreement, but we can't be united in agreement. We need to be united in the Spirit. It's not called the spirit of unity, it's called unity, unified by the Spirit.
Yeah.
So what I see in the future in our region of Gippsland, and my belief is that this would overtake our nation.
Come on.
Is that there would be a one, what I call, what Brian and I understand to be a one-man company that would rise in the call of God and begin to turn the destiny of this nation back to the purposes of God.
Yeah.
Now, that's a big picture, I know, but there's just been too many one-man efforts.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from the many good men and good women that have done amazing exploits in our history, in our biblical history, our scriptural history.
Yeah.
But what I believe lies ahead is God wants to join with unbreakable bonds in his Spirit, a company of people. And I'm not saying that's a small company of people and we'll have different expressions, because Brian's church and our church, we share the same spiritual DNA, but we have a different expression, and that's okay. But rising as one man is the only thing I believe, the one-man company, raising up by the Spirit of God, is the only thing that's going to be able to contest successfully the Goliath that is wanting to overthrow our nation and our region and plunge it into lies and darkness. So it's going to take a one-man company, and that means honor must be the absolute, this is just my convictions, honor must be the principal building block to join hearts, which is selflessness, trusting in God. I don't have an agenda. I'm not competing against my brother. We come together, we become a resource to each other from heaven, and many churches come together in Gippsland with this spirit, with this connection, united together by God.
Yeah.
That's what I look for, believe for in the future.
You know, pardon me, my conclusion tonight, Graham, every city needs a Graham Gunning.
You're a funny man, David.
No, it's true, man. The way you're talking, your heart, honestly, we need more of you in this country. And I'm blessed with you, my brother. So blessed. And we'll leave the last words for the up and coming representation of the new generation that God is raising up all across Australia, the Pacific, and the world. Joel and Sarah, what do you see for the future for you guys and Sale in Gippsland?
Yeah, I really feel like I just want to talk about the church. I reckon the church in the nation needs to transition. It needs to transition from being saved and sitting in church and waiting for Christ to come back, to actually realizing that we've got something to contribute to society. Society's broken in so many different areas, and the principles and the values that are put on the inside of us are the answer. Like, I'll give you a really specific example. In business, the culture and the system is dog eat dog and survival of the fittest. But that's not the culture that we're taught. The culture that we're taught is that we serve each other and we collaborate together and we create opportunity for each other and we create our joint success. If the world operated like that, a generation can actually see a pathway through into wealth. And it's just broken in the system at the moment. You've got a generation that cannot see a pathway through financially. And we've got so much to give to this because we've actually got the answers on the inside of us. We can unlock this for a generation. That's what I see. And we've got to start thinking about how to build the church just within the four walls, but we've got to learn how to take what we're given, turn it and take those values and those principles and outwork it in our daily life. And we've got to overcome, for me, I think we need to overcome a lot more the fear in moving into business, because there's a big fear. It's easier to be an employee than it is to be a business owner. But there's so many benefits to do that. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I see.
Yeah. I just love the way you talk. Joel, can you just come and visit? You and Sarah, come and visit us for a season and speak about young people here. Sarah, what do you see for the future?
Yeah, I think similar to everyone. I think my heart, our hearts for Gippsland. This is where God's placed us, and this is where we've been for a long season. And for us in Gippsland, it's really that God would continue to raise up, many churches, many bases across the region that can work together in partnership to build up the church in the region and to bless our community. And we want to see Gippsland thrive and prosper, in the days ahead. And for that to happen, we really feel like the church needs to take its place and really stand up and be a part of that. So that's what we're hoping for and praying for and working towards here in Gippsland, in sunny Gippsland.
I know, sunny Gippsland. It's cold, but when the sun comes, it's the mix of the cold and the warm sun shining. It's just beautiful, just something perfect about that. I just see leadership on the both of you going forward into the future, and leadership on a macro level, not just the micro, but the macro level. So I'm going to pray that God will raise you both to do mighty things and lead a generation. And when we are long gone, we'll be cheering you from heaven, saying, go, 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 Hey, thank you so much, Brian and Lynn. Thank you for your time. Graham, thank you for your time. Joel and Sarah, thank you for your time. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on Breakthrough Nation live chat tonight. Honestly, we're having so much time. I've forgotten that we've gone over time, but who cares? It's our program. And for those of you who are watching us tonight, thank you for taking the time to listen. And please watch and share this conversation, because there's so much. It's loaded tonight with amazing kingdom substance. God bless you all. And we will see you same time here on the same channel next Sunday. Good night. And we'll see you again.